When you think of gut health, do you think about the gut you can see or the gut you can't see? We don't have all the answers yet, but research is increasingly showing that gut health matters for optimum weight, mood, sleep, and a healthy immune system. So let's take a look on the inside and see how you can promote balance.
I'm Dr. Vicki Petz Casper. I practiced obstetrics and gynecology for 20 years until I landed on the other side of the sheets as a very sick patient. When my own body betrayed me, I took a handful of pills to manage my disease and another handful to counteract the side effects. My health was out of control. Through surgery, medications, and lots of prayers, I regained my strength only to face another diagnosis. My doctor challenged me to make radical changes through lifestyle medicine. Now I feel great and I want to help you make changes that make a difference. Healthy Looks Great on You podcast takes you to many medical schools so you can learn the power of lifestyle medicine. If you're ready to take control of your health, you're in the right place. Whether you're focused on prevention or you're trying to manage a condition, I'll give you practical steps to start your own journey toward better health, because healthy looks great on you.
This is episode 176. Today we're going to talk about the immediate impact of prebiotics, probiotics, and antibiotics. The prep, the promo, and the pernicious. And I'll tell you some foods that you should add to your diet today to improve gut health, because gut health contributes to mental health like anxiety and depression, as well as physical health such as your risk for type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, irritable bowel syndrome, obesity, arthritis, chronic fatigue, and even some types of cancer and autoimmune diseases. There are trillions of organisms residing in your intestinal lining. They move in, set up housekeeping, and live either in harmony or what we call dysbiosis. I mean, with 1,000 different kinds of bacteria using the same address, you'd expect some tension, right? Here's the deal. You want the good bacteria to outnumber the bad bacteria. But how do you do that? I'm so glad you asked. You can keep your gut bacteria in balance with prebiotics and probiotics, but we're also going to look at the disruptive effects of antibiotics. Those are the triple influencers of the gut microbiome. You probably know what a biome is, but to give you a silly visual, I remember when I was a kid, and it was kind of trendy to have a terrarium. My kids never had one, so I assume it's a thing of the past, like pet rocks and jumping beans. Anyway, to set up a terrarium, you need a glass container with soil, plants, water, and sometimes a little turtle. You could buy it at the 5 and dime store. The idea was that the system was self-sustaining, all living in perfect balance, except maybe that risk of salmonella from the turtle. And hopefully there are no turtles in your gut microbiome, but plants and water are certainly big influencers on the bacteria. By the way, there are also viruses and fungi. No, not mushrooms, only microscopic organisms living in this biome. But listen, it is normal for these things to be there. And your gut microbiome is like a fingerprint. It's unique to you. But unlike a fingerprint, it can change. So the FBI can't use it to permanently identify you, but there are some interesting things the CIA has done with poop, which is an indicator of the microbiome. You might be wondering though, how do all these organisms get there in the first place? Your very first exposure to microbes in the world comes when you enter through the birth canal. Then, if you were breastfed, you pick up some more organisms. And as you grow and develop, what you eat affects what grows in your intestinal lining, both good and bad. And ideally, they live in what's called a symbiotic relationship with you, where they promote health rather than upset the ecosystem. And these bacteria aren't just hanging out causing trouble, they have jobs to do. So let's go to mini medical school and learn about the work of the gut microbiome. Think of it like a big factory with lots of different departments. And what do you think the primary function of the gut is? There are lots of right answers, but let's start with digestion. Your body starts breaking down the food you eat as soon as you put it in your mouth. Chewing and saliva get the process started, and the acid in your stomach keeps it going. The bacteria in your gut jump in and break down complex carbohydrates and dietary fibers. And while they're breaking down stuff that your body can't, they crank out short-chain fatty acids. These guys make sure the cells in the gut lining are well fed. Digestion and micronutrients are essential for our bodies to function. We need enzymes for vitamins B1, B9, B12, and vitamin K. The process of digestion is pretty complex. Your body makes bile in the liver. It's a greenish yellow fluid which is stored in the gallbladder if you have one. And it gets released into the small intestine to digest fats. And after your body is done with this work, there's sort of a bacterial cleanup crew that comes in and breaks down these bile acids so they can be reused by the liver. It's kind of like a recycling program. And this is a necessary process because bile is made up of things like cholesterol. And when you don't have sufficient absorption of fats and breakdown of bile, it can build up in your bloodstream, and that's not good. But that's certainly not the only job posted in the Help Wanted section for the gut microbiome. Your body needs lots of workers in the immune department too. Usually, you think of lymph nodes, tonsils, spleen, and bone marrow when you think of the immune system. But did you know that the gut is actually the boss? Here's a fun fact. 80% of immune cells in your body are in the gut. They fend off constant threats and they help your immune system know who is friend and who is foe. And those short-chain fatty acids we talked about form a barrier in the lining of the gut to keep out the bad guys and keep the good guys in. They also put the brakes on inflammation. And look, when you're ordering people or bacteria around, there's going to be some inflammation, and that's normal. But too much of a good thing can be harmful, and that plays a role in autoimmune diseases and even cancers. The next job for bacteria in the gut factory affects your nervous system. There are highways of nerve cells throughout your gut. Bacteria plays a huge role in the production and/or stimulation of neurotransmitters. These are chemical signals that affect behavior, pain, sleep, and mood. Things like serotonin and melatonin travel to the brain through what we call the gut-brain axis. The last department in the gut factory we're going to look at today is the endocrine system. In the org chart, the gut is not only the boss of the immune system, it's also the head honcho for the endocrine system, overseeing the secretion of hormones that affect hunger, insulin, metabolism, blood sugar, and belly fat on the outside, as well as too much fat on the inside, particularly in the liver. I hope you are as amazed about the intricacies of the human body as I am. Just imagining all those little critters doing their work to keep all systems running smoothly is fascinating. It also helps us see how things can get way out of balance and have a huge impact on our health and well-being, both physical and mental. So what do we do to promote a healthy gut full of good bacteria and reduce the risk of too much inflammation, obesity, and cancer? Number one is prebiotics. Let's go to the lab to learn more. Hopefully you've already downloaded my No Plan, No Problem Pantry Guide. If not, go to healthylooksgreatonyou.com/pantry guide and get your copy today. Wait, what does that have to do with bacteria in the gut? Well, like you, they need to eat. Prebiotics nourish the good bacteria, and the good ones listen to their mamas and eat lots of fruits and veggies, especially those high in complex carbohydrates and fiber. Some of the ingredients in prebiotics can't be digested by your intestines. Things like starches, oligosaccharides, inulin, and pectin. That's where your microbiome comes in. All of this information is really under the microscope right now, and appropriately so, because prebiotics can help your body absorb calcium, control blood sugar, promote a healthy immune response, and even reduce the risk of colorectal cancer. As if that weren't enough, these guys can actually lead to better food choices. That's too much science to digest right now, but I think we can all agree that eating plants with prebiotics is a good thing. And listen, I'm going bananas over this. I've always eaten as many bananas as a monkey. I like them green, ripe, and overripe. And when they're about to cross over to complete mush, I freeze them and use them in smoothies. In fact, when I make a smoothie, I always start with a frozen banana. Adding apples and berries adds even more prebiotics. I even use them in ice cream, which is just blended bananas, a couple of tablespoons of almond butter, and whatever flavor you want to add. Strawberries and amaretto, or chocolate and cherry, or a couple of my favorites. Freeze it for 30 minutes, and I promise, no one will even miss the fat-filled dairy ice cream. It is so yummy. And when I was struggling with weight, I remember stressing over bananas because they're high in sugar. But nobody told me they were also high in inulin, which is a prebiotic fiber that's good for your gut. But wait, there's even more good news about prebiotic foods. Not only am I a regular banana eater, I am also a big fan of oats. They're filled with fiber and beta-glucan, which feeds those good bacteria in your gut. And this can help lower cholesterol and maintain blood sugar. When I don't eat hot oatmeal, I sneak it into those smoothies for a very practical reason. Y'all, my appetite is huge, and adding oats to my morning helps me make it to lunchtime. Yay, now it's time to talk about lunch. How about eating beans and legumes to keep those prebiotics coming? The lacto-oligosaccharides are found in chickpeas, black beans, and edamame. And have you ever tasted my lentil salad? It's yummy. I often share the recipe with my email followers, so make sure you're on my list. Just go to healthylooksgreatonyou.com and sign up to get the weekly episodes. Now let's get real for a minute. Some people get a lot of gas when they eat beans, and there's a good reason for this. You see, those little critters in your belly are fermenting the fiber, which promotes good bacteria, like bifidobacteria, which we called Mama Biff in last week's episode. In case you missed it, I'll put a link in the show notes. Now, if you have intestinal issues beyond that, like irritable bowel syndrome, especially the kind that causes loose stools, your symptoms may get worse if you eat legumes. There are a lot of good other options like asparagus, artichokes, carrots, and whole wheat. Even potatoes are high in fiber. And the more color, the better. So choose purple potatoes if you can find them, but orange sweet potatoes are readily available, and they make a great budget-friendly centerpiece for any meal. And don't forget to spice up your meals with things like flax seeds, onion, and garlic, which has fructans, and that promotes the gut lining and keeps the good guys in and the bad guys out. It also helps feed butyrate-producing Mama Biff, as well as the good neighbors in the intestinal lining like lactobacillus and Faecalibacterium prosnitzi, which we called Mitzi Nitzy in last week's episode. Another good prebiotic is barley. And I haven't really used it, but they say it's tasty, so I'm going to experiment in the kitchen and I'll let you know. Now let's talk about probiotics. They're alive! When you think about probiotics, your mind probably goes straight to yogurt, a terribly misunderstood food. I'll tell you why in a minute. But probiotics are living microorganisms that actually replenish the good bacteria in your gut. And that's why your doctor may tell you to eat yogurt when you take an antibiotic, because the antibiotic is going to kill bacteria, the good with the bad. And some yogurts do contain live cultures of bacteria, mostly lactobacilli, but not all. And many yogurts are packed with sugar, and not just natural sugar from fruit either. So if you eat yogurt that isn't sweetened, remember it tastes like sour cream. So heads up when you think you're doing something good for your body and instead you're eating something that would be better classified as a dessert. Now, some yogurts are low in sugar and contain live cultures. You just have to read the label. Pop quiz for those of you who have been listening to Healthy looks great on you for a while. Do you read the label on the front or the label on the back? I'll put a link in the show notes to that episode to keep you from getting fooled. But regardless, yogurt is dairy, and that's not plant-based. I have an upcoming episode on meat versus plants, and I'll talk about dairy too. But for now, we want to add probiotics so that we have more bacteria and even yeast in the gut. So since I've kind of hated on yogurt, where can you find these? In fermented foods like tempeh, miso, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and the drink kombucha. But be careful, this one is often sugar-based as well. But not alcoholic drinks. Those are terrible for your gut and your body in general. And of course, so are processed foods. But good news, sourdough is a probiotic food and it's clearly more palatable than sauerkraut for most people. But if you are serious about making some radical changes and you need a little help getting started or maintaining those changes, I've got some good news for you. Go to my website and check out my Kickstarter program to help you start losing belly fat or make whatever habit change you're trying to make and make it last. Lastly, let's look at the effects of antibiotics. These drugs can save your life and they can kill you. And maybe that's why you need a medical degree to prescribe them. But do you? Nope. You can just keep the leftover ones in the cabinet that you didn't finish, even though the pharmacist told you that it's so important. And then, as soon as you get a sniffle caused by probably a rhinovirus, you start popping them like candy. And they don't do any good whatsoever against a cold, and the potential for harm is not insignificant. And even if you don't get something terrible like C. diff, taking an antibiotic disrupts the gut microbiome by killing off the good bacteria. And it takes a long time to restore law and order in the intestinal neighborhood. Not only that, bugs are smart and getting smarter all the time. They learn to become resistant so that the antibiotic no longer works when you really need it, and that can be serious. So take an antibiotic if you need it, but please skip it if you don't. Gut health is also affected by exercise and sleep. And you know I love me a good night's sleep, and we'll definitely take a deeper dive into the Z's on another day. But stress also plays a role. So I have an upcoming episode on the gut-brain axis. It's super important because the gut affects the brain and the brain affects the gut, and it all affects mental well-being. Improving your gut health can improve mental health. It can improve physical health. So eat your fruits and veggies and make sure you get enough fiber. Try adding some fermented foods in place of processed foods because a healthy gut can mean a healthy body. And healthy looks great on you.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.